Welcome into Before Floor, an extension of 5 on the Floor here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at 5 Reasons Sports and at Ethan J. Skolnick. Today we've got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at 305. Jonathan Romlicon, you can follow at 3-Piece Combo. Greg Sylvander, you can follow at Greg Sylvander. Ricky J. Mark, you can follow at Ricky J. Mark. And Alejandro Villegas, our producer, you can follow at Alejandro VG32. We are sponsored by, as always, by our friends over at Biscayne Bay Brewing, the official beer of the 5 Reasons Sports Network and of the Miami Marlins. You see the Marlins lager there. You can also get the Biscayne Bay, the Tropical Bay IPA, which is my favorite. Also, of course, the Regatta Double IPA, Pastime Pilsner, and all their other great beers. You can find them locally at Whole Foods, Winn-Dixie, many restaurants like Quarterdeck. You can find it at Publix. So check it out. And again, ask for it by name. It's Biscayne Bay Brew, the official beer of the 5 Reasons Sports Network and of the Miami Marlins. Also, check out our friend Mark Brown, marcbrownpa.com. He's the man with a plan. You need an estate plan, reach out to Mark, and he will take care of it for you. A very professional office, small office in North Lauderdale, just north of Cypress Creek off of Andrews. He's also got a title company right there in-house. He can take care of everything for you. If you got real estate, you need a closing done, he is the guy. 954-566-5678. Again, it's 954-566-5678 or marcbrownpa.com. All right, let's get to it. The Heat are in San Antonio tonight, a little bit earlier than we anticipated. An ice storm in San Antonio, of all places. Actually, that kept our guy Marco Romo, who's credentialed the game. He's not going to be able to make it tonight, but we'll have plenty of coverage of the game. And, of course, we'll have posts up 5 hours as soon as the game ends and an episode of 5 on the Floor. A couple other things are happening tonight. All-Star, we have information that Jimmy Butler will be named. I think we feel pretty comfortable with that. Both Greg and I have gotten that from different sources. We believe that's the only player who's going to be named tonight. It doesn't mean that someone else can't get in, say a Tyler Hero, if others end up having to back out or have injuries. But as far as the initial selections, we're not expecting Tyler to be named. We are expecting Jimmy to be named. The other key thing tonight is Kyle Lowry is back, apparently. And so we'll go to you on this, Brady. But the key thing, it's only been 11 games this season. They're actually 7-4 in those games that their quote-unquote Big Four has played together, if you're going to include Tyler in the mix. How does this change the equation tonight if Kyle goes?
Yeah, it changes everything. As I said before, we've seen basically two different teams with this Heat team. One is with when Kyle's in and they're without Jimmy and Bam, and one is when they have Jimmy and Bam and they don't have Kyle. They run two totally different things. What you see when him returning is they're going to basically combine both of them, where it's not as one-dimensional as we've seen lately. Kyle obviously is playing. Jimmy and PJ were planning to play. Caleb Martin is out with some Achilles soreness. It looked like there was like a slip and fall in that corner during that last game. And the Spurs they are rough on their side as well. I think 3 starters from the last game are out, and Deontay Murray, McDermott, and Pirtle. So it's just it's a good game for Miami to try to get back on track. But I do want to say one quick thing to the All-Star thing. Because I know people are going to look at it like Miami's the top seed in this team in the Eastern Conference, and they only have one All-Star. It should be looked at in a little bit different way. That you see all these other teams that they have legitimate 2 All-Stars in because they're in that same range. It should be looked at that it might be a better thing that Miami basically has 4 guys that are contending for it. That's why they are where they are. That's the type of team this is, that they have a bunch of supporting cast. So just because they have one All-Star, it doesn't mean anything, because they're actually in a better position, because that's the way this team is built.
Yeah, and don't be stunned if Jimmy doesn't end up participating, which is a whole other issue. We'll see if he's banged up right beforehand. The All-Star game is not usually his favorite thing, as the league knows, which is why there was a little bit of surprise for me that the coaches actually went for it. Greg, Brady has a good point there. I think also the point that can be made is that the Heat might have had 2 All-Stars if, more of their All-Stars had played more games this year, or more of their potential All-Stars, which, again, speaks to the significance of tonight. This is not a great San Antonio team on the other side to begin with. They're in a rebuilding mode, and they don't have Murray, who is not even arguably, he is their best player. And so, I feel like tonight this is a reset after what's happened the past 3 games. There are no more excuses that really can be made for this team. Vic is Vic. We've talked. Vic has been back burner all season. What you wanted to see was these 4 guys playing together, right? So I'm anticipating maybe a more efficient Tyler than we've seen of late. Maybe Bam and Jimmy can get on the same page with Kyle in there. We talked about that on Full Floor is Yours yesterday, right? It's a little bit of a reset tonight.
It really is. It's like you hope that this is like go forward, that they actually get these 4 guys on the court. And the four we're alluding to, I think everyone realizes, but just to clarify, it's Jimmy, Bam, Kyle, and Tyler Hero. But there's also other things like PJ Tucker getting to do different things and maybe get laser focused on aspects of his role that that he can, really sink his teeth into, where he's been asked to do a lot more lately. Or, Tyler just being able to focus on scoring. There's just all these little different things that wrinkles that, like, how does Duncan fit into this? And as far as all-stars, just to quickly jump in on that, the voting was submitted, I don't know, probably a week or so ago. So like the last 3 games or whatever that's taken place, whether it's with Tyler or Bam, the votes were already in prior to any of that. So just wanted to clarify that piece of it. But this is also a reset for their defense. I feel like everyone's kind of thinking about the offense because Kyle's back and everything he does for the offense. Listen, in their last, let's see here, in their last 4 games, they're giving up 117.5 points a game. That is the most over any 4-game span this entire season. I'm looking for a reset on the defensive end. So as much as we talk about offense, that's what I want to see. I'm glad that Caleb is getting a rest and they're looking more like the full group that we wanted to see from this, season start.
People are asking about Vic. I mean, again, more training session stuff released today, but I feel like with Lowry coming back, maybe there's a little bit less tension to get him back in. I mean, you're adding sort of one piece at a time. I don't even know.
And Gabe playing so well.
Yeah, Gabe's playing so well, and they really haven't played together that much, this group. So, Jonathan, I don't feel like it should be forced. But let's get to the other topic here that never goes away on Heat Twitter, which is Duncan. We are now a week away from the trade deadline. So next Thursday, everybody's going to be in a panic about all this kind of stuff. Do you think there's anything that he can do? I mean, Bam came back, and he looked really good with Bam, and then now it's been regression back over the past 3 games. Is there anything you think Duncan could do in the next week to change whatever his fate may be in a week? Or do you think it's just based on, again, whether or not they always wanted to move him and what may be available to them?
Yeah, it's always going to be what's going to be available. Over the next week is not going to undo what the whole season has been. And with the contract that goes with it, there's a little bit more pressure that goes with it as well. So I think if you get a good deal for him, if you could find something that it'll improve the team, this is a win now team. You have a little bit older Jimmy Butler, a little bit older Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, a lot of veterans on this team, with a little bit of a younger supporting cast. But if you're looking to win right now, and if you can get a good player for Duncan Robinson, I think you make that move. If it's not there, that's okay. He's still a really, really good player. When he's on, he's firing on all cylinders. He makes everything easier for Bam and Jimmy. So either way, I think we're going to be in a good position. And I think we're, with having Kyle back, we'll get to see a little bit more of what could be, moving forward.
Ricky, if this is a reset, the reset comes with the Heat in second in the Eastern Conference in a scrum. There are 6 teams that are within 2.5 games of each other. We haven't seen a conference like this in terms of the depth. I mean, there's the 3 best teams so far record-wise are out west, okay? But in terms of the depth of the East, it's probably the best it's been in quite a while right now. With Kyle coming back, what starts to separate this team, if there is something?
If there is something?
Yeah.
Injuries to all the other better teams.
Okay.
I mean, I want to be honest here about this because Brady did mention the All-Stars that could or could not be named to, or that could be sent to Cleveland representing the Miami Heat. I think it also speaks to the ceiling of this team. I know a lot of people say, yeah, number 1, number 2 in the East and everything, they deserve multiple All-Stars. That's good and fine. But in 2015, the Atlanta Hawks sent, I think, 4 players to the All-Star game, and we saw what their ceiling was because those 4 guys do not a superstar make. This Eastern Conference reminds me a lot of the 2007-2008 Western Conference, where a lot of the teams were separated by a similar amount, and it just so happened that the Lakers finished on top. Granted, the Lakers didn't end up going to the finals that year, but I think we need to temper I think Heat fans need to temper their excitement over being a number 1 seed this season right now, because right now, given how close every team is, that doesn't mean what I think. I don't think it's an indicator of like championship level dominance. I think this team has a very clear ceiling based on what we have now. Kyle Lowry coming back is good for this team, but is he in basketball shape? As we've seen with players coming back from injury or absence, there is a temporary setback, a temporary readjustment phase. The Warriors had to deal with it with regards to Klay Thompson. Miami kind of had to deal with it with Bam coming back. We saw some of the role players that helped Miami to that 14-8 record in Bam's absence kind of take a step back in terms of production with Bam now back on the floor. I think ultimately it's going to be an interesting adjustment phase. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. We hope that Kyle Lowry is able to hit the ground running, but ultimately we'll see what happens with this stretch.
But I do want to say something real quick because actually, thank you, Jason. Oh, you can go to the donation if you want me to get to it. Thank you, Jason Adebayo, for the $4.99 dono. You're always on the post-game show, so appreciate you. There's no point talking about Duncan. Everyone would trade him if a good, not even great package arrived. Thank you guys for all the hard work. Thank you for always watching the show, and thank you for always donating. Appreciate you, Jason. But Ricky, imagine everything falls right? Because we don't know the way the season is going to go. Injuries happen, things play out. If we do end up getting the one seed somehow, regardless if it's a quote unquote fluke or not, we're still going to be in a good position, right? So things should play out, and we could get that one seed regardless of how everybody else's team plays, and that'll still put the Heat in a good position. Sure, that won't make us, the one seed isn't an invincible head and shoulders above any other team, but it'll still put us in a better position than if we were to fall a little bit short of that.
Well, I think
might be the case,
ahead,
but that might be the case, Jonathan. But if you're facing a superior team that is very clearly superior, it's just going to mean they beat you in Game 6 at home. I mean, that like we've talked about before. Of course, home court advantage is nice, but when you're dealing with a team that is very clearly superior, it didn't keep the Hawks from losing to Milwaukee last year, and it probably won't keep Miami from losing to them again this year. But again, yeah, the number one seed is great; it's helpful. But when it really comes down to it, it just changes the venue for the end of the season.
Well, I'll say this, though. I don't know that we can argue that any team is proven clearly superior to them.
Thank you.
That's the thing. I mean, I understand the premise that there are other teams in the East that may have better top-end players. Embiid is better than anybody on Miami. Durant is better than anybody on Miami. Giannis is better than anybody on Miami. But all of those teams have other problems that may not necessarily resolve. Whereas it does seem like some of Miami's problems, again, knock on something, are starting to resolve. Milwaukee does not know when it's getting Brook Lopez back. In my view, they're not getting out of the East without Brook Lopez. They have a giant hole there in the middle, and he was key. And they don't have Tucker either. I'm sorry, you're not winning with Bobby Portis as your best big in the playoffs. It's just not happening. At least you're not going to the finals. You look at the Nets. I mean, my feelings on James Harden. Okay, he can't carry a team in the regular season, let alone the playoffs. Okay, and again, Kyrie hasn't bought in, and Harden is already packed for Philadelphia. The Sixers, it's a nice story, but I mean, again, what are they going to get for Ben? How do they integrate that player? Is Embiid going to stay healthy? I don't have a lot of faith there either. So then you take a look at Cleveland. I mean, this is a first-time situation for them. I don't trust them out of the first round of the playoffs. And then there are nice teams like Toronto and Charlotte. They're not clearly superior to Miami. Toronto's a bad matchup for Miami. So I just, again, I'm not being a homer here. I literally am being a homer because I lost a bet to my daughter. But the reality is that I just don't think anybody's clearly superior. I don't think anybody's proven that. And I think the fact that the Heat have hung around in light of all of their injuries and everything that's going on with them is part of it. Let's get to tonight, though. And it's an interesting debate that we obviously should continue. Rashawn, here's this comment. You forgot if the Heat went out, the Bulls win twice before Sunday ends. Spo will coach the East All-Star, which he does not want to do, by the way. I can guarantee it. It's not something that ever interests him. Brady, give me a key for tonight.
I think we always talk about the Bam matchup and no Pirtle. I don't think if Pirtle was playing, that's not a matchup for Bam. But with him not playing, there's no big even remotely close to Bam on this floor tonight that he is by far has such an advantage matchup-wise that I think this is another game that he can string together a game. Something we always talk about is the consistency factor. He had a big game against Toronto. Can he plug those things together and get another one? I think it's set up nicely. I think the last time Miami played the Spurs, I could be wrong, was like that Tyler Hero fourth quarter when he scored like 20. Like I have that in my mind as well, that he could pick them apart as well. Like these type of teams, these type of games where they kind of have an advantage in this way, it can kind of get out of hand early if Tyler can get going. So that's kind of the way I envision it. Ricky mentioned Kyle kind of get implemented and trying to get his legs under him. I just don't think of it in that way because I don't think they're going to put so much on his plate in this game specifically anyway. Like it just feels like, especially with the amount of usage they have in these other ball handlers on this team, there's just not, I don't think there's going to be a crazy way they're going to go about using Kyle. He's just the more about Kyle coming back is the way he can kind of calm this team down more than actually the scoring mentality.
Jonathan, I'll go to you here on a pick and sort of how this thing plays out. I kind of agree on Kyle that they're not going to put too much on his plate. This would be deflating tonight, though. I will say, getting everybody back and then not playing well against this team. And I don't like their chances against Charlotte all that much, honestly. That's the kind of team that just gets hot against you and gives you trouble. On the road, that one's a little bit concerning to me. So what do you think of tonight?
Yep, there we go. I don't want to put too big of an essence, but this is a must-win game for the Miami Heat, right? When you are on this losing streak, the East is really tight, like Ricky said. We're getting all of our stars back. We have to win this game. This is a game where, the San Antonio is bottom 5 in allowing points in the paint, and they already don't have Pirtle. So like Brady said, Bam is going to have to dominate. I think a lot of cuts, a lot of Kyle setting up Jimmy, setting up everybody else, and I think that's the way we have to get it done. Just dominate in the paint and go from there.
All right. Ricky first, then Greg tonight.
I think tonight could potentially be a trap game. This is the Spurs. That's always the case when Miami plays the Spurs. If Miami is not careful, if they allow it to stay close in the fourth quarter, the Spurs could steal it from Miami, even with Murray out. A talented star player being out on the opposing team has not stopped Miami from not being able to finish. They need to do their job. Bam needs to be there. Kyle, I know Kyle's coming back and there are other ball handlers, but I've seen this movie before where all of a sudden, for some reason, we need Kyle to score almost 30 for this team to have a chance. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we get a team performance out of this Heat team because, as Spo always says, we have enough. They have to go out and show it because, look, it's February. It's Black History Month. Like, go out and do it. Go out and do it because now we're entering the stretch run. Go out
Greg,
and win. Can they?
close.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a couple prize picks. Bam Adebayo, 17.5 points. Go over. I think to Brady's point, that's a matchup to exploit. But go under on his 3.5 assists because with Kyle back, I think that they're going to shift him out of that playmaking, facilitating role a little bit more, and the ball will be in his hands less. So those are 2 prize picks, and use promo code 5 if you go to Prize Picks to double your initial deposit. So Ricky is on to something with Miami and San Antonio. They're 5-28 all time. They've never won consecutive games in San Antonio, and they won when they were there last April. So this would be an unprecedented victory in Heat history to win twice in San Antonio in the regular season, I should say. But regardless of all that, you know how this is about to go. The Heat are going to get back on track, and they are going to – like, this is the build of the run right now. And this is the only thing that I will caution. If Duncan continues to shrink and they do end up dropping this one or dropping the one to Charlotte, and you're all of a sudden you've lost 6 of 7 or you've lost 7 of 9 going into the deadline, and Duncan has shrunk to that degree, it's going to make for an interesting decision on February 10th.
Yeah, it does. I really think it's more dependent on who's out there more so than his status. I feel like if they don't think they can add the right piece, they'd rather hold Duncan for something later. But again, it's going to make for an interesting week. I do think that they win tonight. I will say this, though. It would be deflating if they don't. We winning tonight. Thank you, Poetic Lifestyle. Again, we appreciate the donations. But I also have I still have the same concern about Bam and Jimmy down the stretch. And if it gets there tonight, Kyle's going to have to take control of that situation. I don't not necessarily with scoring, but the ball has to be in his hands to attack, to make plays. I want that out of Jimmy's hands for a little bit. I don't feel that's gone the right direction of late. And, hopefully for Miami, this is not a very good team that they're playing. We can talk about San Antonio. There's no Kawhi there. There's no Duncan there. Okay. There's, like you said, there's not even a DeJounte Murray there. Okay. I mean, seriously, like most of us on this panel, I've covered the league for a living for 25 years. I literally couldn't name 6 guys on their team. Okay, right now, like they're in full rebuild mode at this stage. Get the damn win tonight. Okay,
that's all I got. In you. I think you could name 6, Ethan.
There are guys on that team that I had no idea were there. I did not know McDermott was there. I did not know Zach Collins was there. Okay, we're 2 of the players there. By the way, those are the only 2 top 10 picks that are on their roster right now. The Miami Heat are still the only team in the league that has not used a top 11 pick this entire year. But that's going to change with Vic pretty soon here. All right, thanks to Greg. Thanks to Ricky. Thanks to Jonathan. Thanks to Brady. Thanks to Alejandro. He'll take it from there. We mentioned the Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. Use that code 5, F-I-V-E, to double your initial deposit. We got a homer over a homer. Look at that. Have a good night, everybody.
Let's go Heat.
Maybe.
You guys ready? Yeah, Pop. Is Kata
play back-to-backs, I guess, is what I was told.
And do you have any update on Zach when he might be active or available?
I think there's a good chance he'll be active tomorrow.
Okay. What are you expecting to see from him? Where can he help you the most?
I have no idea. Once I see him play, then I'll know.
Okay. So maybe tomorrow he could go, not
Make
tonight.
something up if you want. I could.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I know lots of stuff. White. I think or believe that they have to put on a show for somebody. Spo is the real deal, just a genuine, good human being who works his ass off. He connects with people. I mean, I enjoyed having him so much with the Olympic program, and so happy that he's going to be a bigger part of it now. He was special with, all the advice he gave and the input that he had while we did it last summer. So, knowing basketball and being able to teach basketball, that goes without saying. But all those other qualities are what make him really special, I think. It's the frying pan. I mean, people ask me before and after. I was more anxious and felt more pressure in that environment than I ever did any finals experience. You're responsible for a group of guys, most of whom you've never coached before. It's your country that's watching. The stakes are huge. And you feel that responsibility, just like Coach K told me. He said you're going to feel it every day as the years go by before the games even start. And he was right. He was right. So now Spo will feel some of that, and I'll just smile at he and Steve and everybody else. Yeah, well, he's a class act. I mean, everybody wants their players to get involved in those sorts of things, but it didn't work out. But he knows that he's improving steadily, and he's not going to moan and groan. He's just going to go forward and continue to learn. Anybody else? Okay. Good to see you guys.
Advertise your business?
And it's a quiet, cool, comfortable environment right down the street from FTX Arena. So check out Quarterdeck if you're in Broward, and check out City Cigar Lounge if you're in Dade. And now, tonight's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And pat the trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to 5 on the Floor. I'm your host, Greg Sylvander. With me on this episode, we have Alex Toledo. You can follow him on Twitter at Tropical Blanket, and Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. You can find me at Greg Sylvander. Tonight's floor plan, we are going to dissect what took place up in Toronto. The Miami Heat unfortunately walked away with a 110-106 loss to the Toronto Raptors. There were some things that I thought were worth taking away, and we'll discuss positive and negative. But ultimately, the Miami Heat are face-to-face with their second 3-game losing streak of the season. So I'm sure fans everywhere are going to be very nervous, and we're going to get the dirty pants for a few days until the Miami Heat can correct this. But I guess I'll start here. Bam Adebayo took a lot of heat for the way he looked the last couple games, particularly in Boston with guys out. I just want to right up front say that what he did tonight, the way that he took the ball to the basket, the bounciness with which he dribbled the basketball as people were guarding him, that's what I want to see. And I think that that's what fans collectively are looking for. Like when he had that little pep in his step, like that bouncy thing where dudes can't guard you, like he needs to recognize he has that in almost every matchup that he's playing with. And I know that it's not always part of game flow, confidence, lots of different factors. So all I want to say is that what we saw from Bam tonight, I think he's capable of doing more of it. But the fact that that's in there, we got to give the dude a little bit of grace, I think, as he gets back from these injuries and we've had all these ins and outs. So ultimately, me being a Bam Adebayo apologist, that's the way I'm starting the podcast. Brady, I'll start with you because you got your takeaways up. So you've had the chance to digest this probably quicker than Alex or I. What were the things that jumped out at you? I mean, I think that there's some different avenues we can go down, but just generally, I thought turnovers were still problematic ultimately. And Toronto just had more at the end. The Heat had a 15-point lead and ended up, I think I heard on the broadcast that then it was 40-20 from that point. Toronto went on a run and the Heat just couldn't recover. What did you see in the game that really looked problematic overall?
I do want to start out and talk about Bam for a second to say that it looked like he corrected a lot of the things from the last Toronto matchup. Me and Alex read that game, and so we kept pointing out was that he wasn't really taking advantage of the mismatches when guys were down low. Coming in this game early on, he was taking advantage of that mismatch, and he was going up with it immediately in the post, going into those post hooks and things like that. But the difference was later in that game, you saw him just adjust with the flow of the game, where you're mentioning him having that pep in his step. He's a totally different player when he has momentum coming down the floor. Like there was some times where he got the lob just in the fast break, but there was times where he went, I think it was maybe before the half where he did a nice little hesitation right before the half, went left, got a little scoop layup. Like there's times like this where when he gets this little face up momentum and he gets moving toward the basket, and it's why people constantly scream for maybe added screening, inverted pick and rolls, because when the guy gets some momentum and gets going towards the rim, there's no one that can really stop him. Like it's just such a hard player to stop. And you see him getting to the line at elite level. He's just a hard player to stop in general. Talking about the problems from this game, I think the biggest thing to me that stands out is that this is another game where late game offense just really sticks out. And it's against the same team that it happened to last time. And it's almost in completely different ways. For one, yes, they're without Kyle Lowry, or they're without a main piece of how this offense would run probably late in the game, but they still have a decent amount of players late closing lineup that'll probably be on the floor when that comes around. So I'm looking at the last Toronto game where Jimmy's basically spamming on-ball actions, kind of taking over offensively. This one, it felt like he wasn't even included in any of the on-ball actions late in this game. So it pretty much flipped. Both these games, there was issues down the stretch. I think the issue was, to me, for about maybe from the 4 to the 2 minute mark, they were working everything through PJ Tucker and Caleb Martin. And that's when things come problematic. When you have Bam, Tyler, and Jimmy on the floor and they're kind of the bystanders and there's 7 seconds left on the shot clock and you're looking for a handoff to Caleb Martin to make a play, that's just kind of where you're at. That's the issue. You're putting yourself in a hole in that way that it just seems like they get away from a lot of the base things that they run late in games. And I think that's just something it's simple. That's something that they have a weakness in and they have to get better at. It's early enough in the season that they're at the midway part that they can improve in that, but it is just a clear thing that we've seen this season develop. The one thing that sticks out that they really do need to progress in.
Yeah, no, the late game stuff continues to haunt them. And it's weird because you think like matchup specific, certain guys get hot at certain times that maybe you'd want to feed different players, but they haven't established anything that you feel like is like the go-to sets and the go-to guys late in games. I mean, it's been Jimmy, but it still just looks a little in the mud. Ultimately, and this game they were playing, it wasn't even that way from the standpoint of they were just trying to play catch up there at the end. But we keep seeing these things over and over again. The way they defended the 3-point line, 12-26. I mean, that's you're not going to win that way, especially when you're shooting 8 of 30. That's only 26%. So that was difficult. Alex, I'll go to you here. More about Tyler. I think that's where I kind of want to go. And I want to get your takeaways too. So definitely if you want to lead with those, feel free. But I'm interested in your perspective about Tyler Hero because there were moments where he was clearly getting picked on out there again. And this is something that I keep seeing. And I love Tyler Hero. So for me to call it out, it hurts to do, but he's getting hunted at times. I thought that there was moments towards the end of the game that he kind of made up for what was otherwise kind of a lackluster game. The turnovers are bothering me. He's making really errant passes like over and over again in consecutive possessions. It's tough. So your general takeaways, and then like, what is this Tyler Hero conundrum that we have going on in the last handful of games?
It's funny because I actually came away from this game kind of positive about Tyler. I think there was there's always stretches with Tyler where, he's going to have turnovers. That he ended up with 3 in 28 minutes. Not great, not bad for the amount of ball handling he does. I don't think it was too bad. I mean, he finished 7 of 12, and there was a lot of times where I'm like, okay, he's really getting into the paint and making stuff happen. And in that stretch, to hop onto what Brady was talking about before with Bam and moving quickly, it feels like this Heat team, other than Jimmy Butler, is better when the ball is moving quickly, when they're just kind of reading and reacting all the time, especially Bam, right? And not to talk about Bam here, but he was just, my God, one of the most impressive games I've ever seen from him. Just catch and go, looking like an absolute scoring beast. I don't know if he heard our pods. I mean, I'm messing around, but like the way that everybody's been talking about him, for him to respond like this, it's like he has seen some rank. That was the best ring efforts I've ever seen him put together. The way that he was intentionally trying to go out there and make something happen, attacking the basket, like Ethan likes to say, grab the ball and go, right? It's really that simple. Like when the game slows down and he's just and it's waiting for the handoff or waiting for another play to happen, and then everything slows down and he's waiting, and then he takes a jumper at the end of the shot clock buzzer, which happened a couple of times tonight, by the way. He looks worse, but when the ball is moving and guys are constantly moving around, passing, screening, etc., he looks a lot better. And I think the same can be said for Tyler. Like he was excelling in that pace. And I feel like although he had his turnovers, he had his mistakes here and there, like I think he's just gotten really comfortable at being able to attack no matter who's in front of him, no matter what type of defense they're throwing out. And he's not going to try and force a shot on a Scotty Barnes or an OG without first getting an advantage. Like I think he really understands when is the time to attack, when is the time to pull up. And he's just putting it all there together. It just sucks that between him and Bam, they weren't able to play more because of that foul trouble they got. Like Jimmy finished at 40 minutes, even though he had a tough game, 3 of 10. He got to the free throw line 10 times, so that's great. Jimmy does other things, of course. But Bam, 35 minutes, Tyler, 28 minutes. So, that's a huge part of it right there. Yeah, no, and I actually had I saw some discourse on Twitter related to the fact that Strus had 33 minutes and Tyler only had 28 minutes. I think that had a lot to do with Tyler's foul trouble and trying to preserve him. So I think that's what you saw there. But there's something else going on here, and we're not going to avoid it any longer.
As I look at Duncan Robinson, I'm just going to go over the last few games here. We've got January 29th, Toronto. He played 19 minutes and 55 seconds, had 0 points, 0 of 5 from the field. At Boston, 26 minutes, 6 points, 2 of 8 from the field. Tonight, 14 minutes and 33 seconds, 1 of 6 from the field, 5 points. This is another one of those stretches where they're shying away from him. It's an interesting moment, being that the trade deadline is approaching. I'm not going to read too much into that, but Brady, I'm at the point where when you're shorthanded like they are tonight, and you have a player that you've committed to the way that you have, like let's not even talk about the money. Let's just say that you got you committed to him for 5 years, and he can't sniff the court at certain points of the season. To me, it just doesn't sit well. And I know we keep harping on it. So it's like part of me doesn't want to reinvent the wheel and like dissect this further. But I just think that it's really interesting in a game like tonight, when you were down bodies already, you didn't see much from Duncan. And I'm interested early on what you saw, because that was really like the point that that kind of made or broke his playing time for the game. What you saw that kind of got Duncan completely out of sorts.
Yeah, the reason this game sticks out is we've seen moments like this where they kind of push him to the side. Maybe a Max Strus pops off and he's shooting really well, or a Caleb Martin's having a good shooting night. He shot 27% from 3 tonight. Like, this isn't one of those games. This is not a time where they're saying we're going to get production from 3 in another area, that we are just going to do that. This is a team that basically said they're going to go in a total different direction. Even early in this game, they were heavy inside the paint. They were going pretty much away from 3 of what they usually like to do. And we saw them go to that even more. As I talked about the driving kicks, it was just kind of the drives. It wasn't even the kicks, because they were going in such a different direction. They were actually getting good looks. A lot of that had to do with Bam kind of getting to the rim as well. But looking at his looks, I think this is, as I said before the game, this is just not a good matchup for him. And I think there are a lot of these type of matchups in a potential first round series. If you look below toward the bottom of the East, there's just a lot of teams that are going to swarm you totally when coming off these handoffs, when coming off these screens. When you're a player like Duncan Robinson, that literally every shot is essentially going to be coming off of a screen, this Toronto team is not the team you want to see, because as you see, you have an OG, you have a Scotty, you have a Siakam just basically swarming you, edging these screens and basically daring you to shoot. There were a couple of times it just comes to memory of him shooting one-on-one, just coming off the catch. But the difference is he usually has length over guys where he could shoot over the top of them. He doesn't have the ability to shoot over the top of these guys. He tries, but they are right there on him because they are just as lengthy and tall as him. It's just a weird dynamic in general. I think maybe part of it from Spo was saying that this isn't the greatest matchup. And I felt like Strus, this is a decent matchup for him, because he's basically a guy, as we saw again tonight, he's going to slip a bunch of screens. He's going to do these other things that it fits against the Toronto game plan more than a Duncan. So I think that was probably part of it. But other than that, it just felt like a really odd scenario to look around and see the way they're shooting. And it even felt at times, which may sound crazy, when Caleb was in there, it felt like maybe go even total offense, like in a game like this, where you're looking at them shooting bad. Put Strus, Duncan, and Tyler out there at the same time, which may sound absolutely terrible for what we're talking about, Tyler getting on it defensively late in this game. But it just felt like with the way the late game offense looked and the way that I felt like even when they were down 3, 4, 5, that they didn't have a chance in this one late, I wouldn't have been opposed, let's say, to kind of going totally offense.
Yeah, no, I can see where you were heading in that direction, because the offense they were just missing shots, and it just led to disjointed possession after possession. I'm glad you brought up playoff matchups, and this being one that maybe we would want to avoid. After the break, I want to talk a little bit about the teams that are down there and what are kind of the same things that the Heat, the common threads in the teams that you don't want to see, and maybe some of the matchups we would more want to see, because I don't want to spend much time on this game just because he lost. So, we're not going to talk about it that long. And I don't want to see Gary Trent Jr. in the series. I'm going to go on record as saying that you could tell he was hunting for that 30-point game. I think he broke DeMar DeRozan's record for consecutive 30-point games in Toronto Raptors history tonight. So I don't want him in a playoff series, but we're going to talk more about playoff series and also something that broke mid-game video footage that broke mid-game that had Heat Twitter buzzing, and I think it should have all Heat fans buzzing as we look forward. But first, a word from our sponsors.
We'll get back to our episode in a second, but before we do, we talk about our product code all the time. It's 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN, and that's where you can go. That's what you can use to get discounts on great products. We're going to start with Get Solis, getsolis.com. That's to replace your electrolytes in a healthy way. Don't just want to be pounding Gatorade. Go to getsolis.com. Actually, they're going to be at the Miami Beach Convention Center this week prior to the marathon, so you can check them out there as well. But use their code 5RSN for 10% off. And again, if you're a distance runner, if you play tennis, this is the stuff you need. It's natural and it's great for you. Also, if you need CBD, go to therapistpreferred.com. Use that same code 5RSN. That's for the tincture, the gummies, the sports cream. That's for sleep. That's for recovery. Therapistpreferred.com. 25% off with the code 5RSN. And for all of your grooming products, it's manscaped.com. That includes the cologne, the razors. They sell a lot of stuff there on the site. So just check it out. Again, it's manscaped.com. Use the code 5RSN for 20% off there. And for that one, I've got to give you the tagline: your balls and your body will thank you. And now back to the episode.
Okay, welcome back to Five on the Floor. I'm joined by Alex Toledo and Brady Hawk. We are taking you through the Miami Heat's 110-106 loss to the Toronto Raptors up in Toronto. They are in game 2 of a 6-game road trip. Their next game is Thursday in San Antonio, followed by a Saturday night game in Charlotte. And then they head on to Washington. So that's kind of what we're looking for in the next week or so. So you talked about matchups in the playoffs and teams they don't want to see. And the playoffs are kind of in, like, when you look at the top 6, they're moving a lot and shaking. So I'm gonna discard that part of this right now. Like the Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Miami, Chicago. I just read that in inverse order of the standings. We're just eliminate them. So we're talking Charlotte, Toronto, Boston, Atlanta. New York's a half game out. Washington's a half game out. Everyone else is nowhere close. So that's the teams we're going to look at. Alex, I'll start with you. Tell me so Charlotte, Toronto, Boston, Atlanta, New York, Washington, the 3 teams you want to see least.
Well, I guess to do it in reverse order, I guess that's the way you're supposed to do it. Number 3 for me would be the Celtics, because of what Brady was talking about there. They're one of the teams there that they love to switch a lot. We saw it last game. I mean, they got absolutely destroyed, and obviously they were missing a whole lot. It wasn't a fair sample of what that series would look like, of course. But part of what Brady was talking about there, and to lend to his point, is that teams that switch everything have notoriously given the Heat problems. Not that they don't have ways that they can solve it. Not that they don't have, built-in counters to solve it. But, yeah, I mean, I just think switching in general gives the Heat a lot of problems when it comes to Duncan, when it comes to Tyler. Those guys have, like I said, built-in counters around it, but I think the Heat would prefer teams in a drop. I think the Celtics have 2 guys who can really turn it up on a night-to-night basis. And even though they've been really underwhelming this season, like they have not been very good at all, that's a team that, with the type of size they have, if they're going to be starting Al Horford and Robert Williams, that's going to be hard on Bam. Like, it's not going to be the Daniel Tice series again. I just think even though Bam could turn it up, we saw him flip a switch tonight. He could play better than what he did against the Celtics. Like, there's a lot of stuff there that I feel like would bother the Heat. Heat in 5, though. The second team there is the Hawks. I think they've been another really underwhelming team. I still believe in Trae Young more than I do some of these other guys there, and kind of the depth that they have. I feel like they're going to be a team that probably makes a trade coming up in the next couple of weeks. And it kind of feels like a team that's going to have a second half run with the type of weapons that they have. I just think they have enough to really win another series. I don't think it's going to happen because they're going to be in the bottom tier again, but and not that they're going to beat the Heat at all, but I just think that's the type of team that got to the conference finals last year for a reason, and it was because they got the Sixers. But no, seriously, the Hawks they're a pretty good team, and getting them in the first round, just like the Celtics, it's kind of tough, man. Like these teams are teams that
they have
both
takeover
in the conference
players.
finals. They were both in the conference finals, like 2 out of the past 3 seasons or whatever. And then lastly for me is the Raptors. Like, I just think we saw why you don't want to play that team. Again, we haven't seen this team with Lowry against the Raptors. So obviously that's going to make a huge difference. But I just still think, like, because of that switching stuff I was talking about, because they've got multiple guys with Van Vliet and Siakam, and now Gary Trent apparently, who can just really go and get buckets for themselves or for others out there. I just think it's going to be a problem for the Heat. Not too much of a problem. I think the Heat would ultimately win out, but I feel like a lot of those games could go similar to how they've gone the past couple of where if the Heat are not hitting their threes, because the Raptors are top 10, by the way, and giving up threes and opponent shot distribution, like, it just feels like a lot of the stuff gets stuck in the mud. Or you get a night like tonight where Bam goes crazy and he has one of the best games he's ever had, and you still can't win, right? Like, the team is obviously extremely well coached, has a lot of length and size and talent. Obviously, Scotty Barnes is the type of guy who could just go off in the playoffs. He's a rookie who's been getting better as the year goes on. Like, it really screams a team that can get an upset in the first round. That being said, I don't think the Heat will lose to any. I don't think they will lose to any of these teams, really. Like, I think a lot would have to go wrong for them to lose to any of these teams.
Yeah, I'm not there with Atlanta. I don't buy it. Brady, if you want to chime in on the only other viable option, which would be Charlotte, please do. But of the teams that
I may be disrespecting Charlotte a little bit.
That's true. I shouldn't, because like that would actually be the one that I would want the most, as I just butt in here, because they're the closest to where I live. So there would be a playoff series that I could actually cover. So I have vested interest in the Charlotte Hornets falling into whatever seed that is that the Heat will be in. But I'm interested in your take, because I feel like and if you want to talk about Charlotte, wax poetic all you want, but Toronto and Boston are probably the teams that most fans, as they look at this list, would say are the ones that they don't want to see. So from your standpoint, is there one of those two that you would want to avoid most? Is there one that you feel particularly good about? Are you aligned with Alex? I'm interested less about Atlanta, New York, Washington, blah, blah, blah. Charlotte, if you got something there, but more about Toronto and Boston, because I think we've identified Cleveland as this team. Hold on here. Wait a minute. We need to go through this. So we don't want to play Philadelphia because we don't have enough bigs for Embiid. Cleveland is too big for us because they're long and blah, blah, blah. Milwaukee is the defending champion, so we don't want to see them. Brooklyn has too much star power, so we don't want to see them. So essentially, and now you guys have talked me out of Toronto and Boston, and Alex almost talked me out of Atlanta. So essentially, you're telling me if we don't play the Bulls or the Hornets, we don't feel confident. No, I'm just joking. You see what a 3-game losing streak can do to our psyche around here. No, I'm joking.
Hey, who is it? Who are you?
Right? I know. No, it's late. Ethan has us on the late shift on these late game reaction losses. Brady, Toronto or Boston, who would you rather face of those two teams that present different challenges for Miami?
Honestly, in the first round series, I would rather face Boston. Just like what I said, he talked about the switching. But they still throw and drop because they're playing two bigs in Horford and Robert Williams. So I think there are gaps there where they can kind of take advantage. Against a Toronto team, there are no gaps. Like, you're playing a 48-minute starting lineup, which is just incredible, by the way. You're talking about a team that's going to go through 82 games, basically playing their starting five the entire game. Maybe I'm going to talk myself out of it saying they're going to be tired by playoff time, but I'm not, because it's a bunch of young guys on that team that'll probably still be ready to go. But talking about the three teams, I would say that I'm not as high on Atlanta. I think Charlotte would probably be my 3 in there, just because they wouldn't be as high, just because I don't trust them experience-wise, but I think they do have that punch offensively that they can get you a game or two, potentially, just because they're so dynamic in that way. But obviously defensively, I think Miami could actually take advantage of the things that they can against Toronto or Boston. But I will say, I think I'd rather face Boston. Toronto, the reason I say that I feel like it's more difficult is just because I'm totally aligned with Alex saying that they would win. It would just be such a drawn out first round series. Like, when you talk about the Heat playing for the long haul and playing to get to the playoffs, and then you're talking about getting possibly being a contender, that is a drawn out series for a Heat team, because that is a 6-game series, in my opinion, in a first round. Like, it may sound crazy, but that is a team that they can go back and forth, as we've seen. And no game is going to be easy. Like, it feels like every game is going to be probably less than a 6-point game. Like, that's just the way it is. It's not going to be. Boston has the firepower at the top of their roster that I feel like they can go back and forth certain games. Toronto's going to be a gritty game down at the end every time. So it just feels like I don't really know how it would work out, because obviously we don't know the Heat where they're going to land seating wise. But if that was to happen, that would be probably as rough as it gets in terms of a first round seeding, just the way these two play. But also I do want to say, when you were mentioning all these other teams, I don't think they're scared of obviously the 76ers and obviously Cleveland when you're making that joke. But the more I think about it, I like that matchup. Like, I look at them and I know they have a dynamic five. I know Embiid, who could probably be the MVP if he keeps playing this way. But I like when Miami can kind of take advantage of guys who play inside the arc, especially come playoff time when it comes down to half court offense, half court defense. They can send doubles. They can figure out ways that I feel more comfortable than these perimeter teams. Then you look at the other Bulls, the Nets, and these other teams. I think they feel more comfortable in that way. Similar thing to Cleveland. Like, Cleveland's gotten the best of them with length, but in the playoff series, that's just kind of a different beast. I think they can find counters to that as well. So just looking through the matchups, it's interesting. Yeah, they're on a bit of a losing streak, but we kind of do have to remember that I feel like we're forgetting that Kyle Lowry's on this team in a lot of ways, because the offense is not going to be like this for long. The late game offense, I feel like, is problematic and needs to get better. But they probably won't be in a lot of these late game situations if they have the offensive impact to Kyle Lowry.
I'm with you. Heat and 5 against all them teams, and especially set the 76ers. Bring that series on. Alex was rubbing his hands together like he had some hot takes ready to fire out the cannon. So I want to give him his just due as it relates to the top of the Eastern Conference, because that's when he was looking like he had food.
Well, actually, I was just rubbing my hands together when Brady started talking about the Sixers and the type of things that the Heat could throw out there at Embiid, because I think that's what Spo is doing when he thinks about matching up versus that Sixers team in the playoffs. The way they're currently built, just to say, is that I think he's rubbing his hands together. It's like, go ahead. I want to see Embiid like try to beat all these different coverages we're going to throw at him. Like, make him beat me and our team as a playmaker. Go ahead. Like, show it to me, because I just don't believe it. Obviously, like, Embiid has gotten even better. The dude is a monster. As much as I'd love to talk crap about him and the Sixers, it's mostly for fun. Embiid is a beast, but I really do believe that the Heat just have all sorts of things that they can throw at him, especially, like, you know, if the Sixers don't land a CJ McCollum or another real, like, all-star caliber player like that you throw into the mix that can change things up. I just don't think they have enough, like, with or without Ben Simmons, right? I think the Sixers are a type of team that is kind of looking like a first round out this year, even though what Embiid has done, the fact that they're now like right up there in the top of the East is pretty damn impressive. I didn't think they were going to do this, but I still think it comes down to Brooklyn and Milwaukee when we're really talking about playoff matchups. So
yeah, no, I'm with you. In Cleveland, like, whatever. Like,
I'm scared of Cleveland. Like, if it's any of these teams, it's Toronto that's really gonna push them.
That's so funny, because that could actually be one of those matchups. Brady, did you want to jump in? I saw you come off mute real quick. Just want to give you the shot before I wrap here with because we're gonna wrap on a good note. So just know that. But Brady, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it's good to see that we turned a 3-game losing streak pod after a loss in Toronto into Philly slander. So I just wanted to say that we really looped that full circle.
You're right. You see, so we stay true to our brand here on 5 on the Floor. So ultimately, the Heat lose 110-106 to the Toronto Raptors. Bam Adebayo, 32 points, 11 rebounds, his 13th double-double of the season. Jimmy Butler was 2 rebounds shy of a triple-double. Eric Spoelstra was quoted after the game as saying, "We didn't do the little things, the tough things." I think, like Brady, to your point, Toronto would be a long series. I don't want to see that either. But so we're moving on from that, because in the middle of the game, and bear with me as I scroll through, folks. You guys know I scroll on pods because I know that y'all think that is quality podcasting. At 9:18 p.m., Bally Heat, so that's Bally Sports, Suns Heat. They tweeted out video of a 2-on-2 with Mr. Victor Oladipo playing. And people were making fun of recent practice footage of him just kind of, you know, throwing up hook shots, whatever. It didn't look that impressive. These highlights looked impressive, and he looks close. Like, to bring him out onto the court so that they can get that footage and put it on TV, that means he's close, fellas. You just wrote a piece, Brady, on Victor Oladipo and the implications of him. So I'll start with you because we're ending this podcast on a high note. Tell me just what you saw in that clip. I know, like, we're not going to dissect minute 14 clips and like go into what this means for them in Game 5 of the NBA Finals. But man, it felt good to see Depot, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing to me, playing one-on-ones, playing 2-on-2 is probably the most important thing when you talk about what he can bring to this Heat team. Because if he develops that, something I talked about in that piece the whole time was about his driving ability. It just feels like that's the biggest thing when you look and we tie it back to what we've been talking about in this pod, like late game offense and the different parts. I think the biggest thing is when you're trying to unlock Tyler Hero, make him your third attacker instead of your second. Like that feels like the bigger thing, the bigger picture here when you're talking about the things they can run. Victor Oladipo, we can talk about him not being 100% possibly or not having that full burst. But when watching Victor Oladipo, even his time in Miami for that short stint or before that, he's not a player that just thrives heavily off burst. Like he's just a pretty finesse player that goes through as an attacker, kind of slow. He gets to the free throw line as we saw, I think 3 out of the 4 games. Yeah, crafty. So I think that's just an interesting part that if he can bring that, it's not only about it's just more about re-injury than kind of percentage wise of what he can bring. It just, if he's kind of fully healthy and he doesn't have a re-injury high percentage, then that's all you need. Because I'm looking at this game and looking at these other games that they have enough shooting, even though they shot 27% tonight from 3, that they have enough shooting to get around. But if you add that kind of Swiss Army knife that can do so many different things, and you talk about Caleb and Gabe being that on-ball pressure, but you have Victor Oladipo who's so good at just navigating screens off the ball and can be so many different things for an Eric Spoelstra offense that it just feels like, as we've said before, he's the perfect player to kind of plug into this team with what they need.
Alex, you saw the Debo clip, right? I'm not surprising you, am I?
No, absolutely. I retweeted it. That's how good it was to see.
Jeremy knew what he was doing when he put that out there. Shout out to Jeremy for getting that out into the Twitter space, because he knew that we were going to take that and run with it.
Yeah, that's my guy. Shout out to Jeremy and shout out to Victor Oladipo, man. I'm happy that he's looking like he's going to be back soon. Like, I agree with you. I don't think the Heat and Bally Sports and them would put that out for no reason. Like, they know what's going on, man. And they've also said it. They've kind of hinted that he's been kind of on his way back a little bit. He's been on that comeback path. And obviously we saw those videos last week that were going up at practice. And now we see this. Like, these are patterns. These are patterns to watch out for. Who knows when it's the first day of February. It's the first day of February. This is the month that everybody's been waiting for when it comes to Victor Oladipo. Like, we're getting towards All-Star break. It's looking like he might be back within the month. And I just think it will be a huge addition because the pressure wouldn't be on him, like we've talked about in other pods, to come out and have to score a bunch, have to play make a bunch, have to defend a bunch. Like, his contributions, as long as he doesn't look like a negative out there, I think he's going to be like just a really seamless addition to what they do. Especially we're talking about just like the read and react stuff. I think he excels in that. I think he's really good at kind of just making stuff happen, getting into the paint, obviously, like we talked about, creating for others. I think, like Brady was talking about there, as the years have gone by, even though some of the athleticism with the injuries has dipped a little bit, he's gotten craftier and craftier, not only as like a finisher and the finishing angles that he takes, and like he gets creative there, but he also, I think, likes to get like jump shots and different types of looks now. Like, it's not just set shots for him. Like, I think he can come off a curl and hit a pull-up mid-range shot if it's there, if a big drops, for example. I just think that he's a versatile type of scorer that they can use off the bench, even if he doesn't, he's not a 20-point per game scorer or anything like that. He's going to be an upgrade over some of these guys that they're playing. Like, he's just that talented.